Welcome back to the Dirthead Shed. Having a ridiculous deadline helped me finish that Jeep over there, so I figured what the heck, I might as well set one for the little white Nissan as well. I'm going to try to take this thing down to Las Vegas, Nevada so I can go check out the SEMA show in like 2.5, 3 weeks. I got a lot of work to do. Let's get busy. It's mini truck time in the Dirthead Shed. I want to work on the white Nissan, but the D50's broke again. So we got to throw this thing up in the air, slam a fuel pump in it. Hopefully this one lasts a little longer. And then we got some cool stuff going on the little D21 hardbody pickup. Come on. There we go. All right, I am back from Unreal Adventure and I went to work for a few days. It's now the weekend and I ran the little D50 up to the dump to get rid of some pallets and cardboard and a bunch of stuff, and that thing crapped out on me on the way home coming down the highway, so I limped it home. It actually like pumped back up and I was able to drive it all the way home. But it's time to do another round of fuel pump repairs on this thing. It's got the Edelbrock pump up front here, which if you read the instructions and you talk to anybody, it says make sure the pump is at the bottom of the tank as far as the level goes and all the way back by it. So I wasn't really surprised that I burned up another one of these pumps. It kind of happens. So what we're going to do is move the pump back to the frame rail, and I got a different brand one I want to try out. We're also going to try and work in a regulator that has a return right here. So if all goes well, we're going to end up with a fuel system that actually works pretty good with this thing and lasts a long time. So I want to get this thing knocked out, and then we will jump on the Nissan. The Nissan is what I really wanted to work on this week, but this kind of jumped in the way. This thing needs to be running and ready to go, and it's not at the moment. I got kind of lazy the last time I was messing with the fuel pump because I didn't have the lift available. And I was tired of crawling around on the ground under this. That's why the pump is still up there in the engine compartment. I know where it's supposed to go. I just didn't want to do the work, so I'm paying for it now. Alright, let's see if this thing's doing well or if I'm dragging this thing to death and causing some damage. Alright, here's the first time I've been under this in quite a while. I've been driving this thing like crazy and dragging it on speed bumps and hauling toolboxes with it. I am not seeing anything bad. The gas tank is like fresh. I do have a little bit of scraping on this cross member, which was totally expected, and this little like plate that's sort of a sheet metal thin thing is bent up a little bit. Transmission cross member, I've got some scrapes here and there and a few scrapes on the exhaust. How's the front end holding up? Couple scrapes on the cross member there, but nothing bad. Not bad at all. Awesome. I'm stoked. This thing's hanging in there. Springs are cut, a little loose right now with it at full droop. Feels like I have a sway bar in link out, or ball joints are going bad, or something's going on in the front end of this thing. I did have to rebuild the idler arm recently. This is a rebuildable one. You can actually just buy the bushings for it. So I rebuilt that the other day, a week ago or something. It was flopping around. So yeah, all is good. What a good little truck. It's been great driving this thing. Alright, I'm back in the shop. Yesterday I didn't get a ton done. I just kind of got the truck in the air and got my game plan together. I wanted to show you what I'm going to use for a new fuel pump on this though. I've been using those little red Edelbrock ones that you see at the auto parts stores for they're like 69 or 75 bucks now. And I burned up like 3 of them. Part of the reason is because I've been running them up at the engine bay, up high, kind of near the carburetor, sort of close to where the stock fuel pump would have been. Most of these electric fuel pumps are designed to be mounted as a pusher, not a puller, meaning it's close to the gas tank, it's got fuel like right there, and then it pushes that fuel up to the carburetor. So if you read the instructions, even on the Edelbrocks, it says mount the thing down low on the frame rail and as close to the gas tank as possible. And I didn't do either of those things, so I think that's why my pumps have been dying. I'm going to try a whole different style this time. This is a true grade fuel pump from AutoZone. It's like a factory replacement style one. That's the part number I went with, E8016S. It should be, I've heard that these are actually pretty good. And looking back, way back, when we were doing like old cars with carburetors and like hot rod stuff, this was actually a pump that you'd almost always find on a car that was being built like in the 90s that would have an electric fuel pump. So I'm going to go ahead and try this. It comes with a little bracket so that I can mount it on the frame rail. I'll get it down, I'll get it right there close to the tank on the frame rail. I'll have to extend some wires. This part does have me a little concerned. The wires to this are absolutely tiny. They're like 16 gauge, which seems small for a fuel pump, but it will tell me if it's good or not. It comes with a little fuel filter for the inlet side, and yeah, I'm gonna run that down there on the frame rail. Then coming up into the engine bay, this is what I'm gonna run. This is a 3040 is the part number. This is a fuel filter that's designed for like a 80s, no, late 70s like Jeep. And basically it's a fuel filter, but it also has a return. So this is gonna go up in the engine bay close to where the fuel pump is now. And then I'll run the return line into the factory return back to the tank. So hopefully this pump will have a little more longevity than that Edelbrock one, and the fact that it will have a return so that this pump isn't just deadheading and like still pumping even if the carburetor's not using the fuel. Now it can return to the tank. Hopefully this one lasts a little bit longer. That's enough talking about it. I'm gonna go bolt all these things in place. It's pretty straightforward. Mount this on the frame rail, hook up the hoses. I'll use this filter instead of the one that the one that it had, and then we'll see how it all works. It should be good. All right, let's get busy. It's not real easy to see what's going on here, but basically there's a line coming out of the tank that is our feed. It goes up here to a plastic fuel filter, which I had replaced recently. And then from that, it drops back down, and the fuel line is right, it's this top one. So that's going to be our feed line. So what I need to do is get the fuel pump like located basically right in this area, and then go straight from the, what I really need to do is go with the fuel pump like right in this area, and then go straight from the pump to that, and then possibly just shorten this line a little bit. This is why I haven't done it yet, because it's actually a little more complicated than I wanted it to be. But we'll figure this out. We will get it done. I didn't really want to have to do any welding since I'm working on fuel system, but I got to get a decent spot for this pump to mount. And I made this little bracket. This is just a piece of angle iron. And this pump will fit really well right here. I just gotta weld this little bracket on. Let me double check and make sure this thing fits kind of how I want it to. I'm thinking like right there. It's down low enough that it's gonna get gravity fed pretty easily. I can access the filter that it comes with pretty easy. And I should be able to like cut back the line that goes up to the engine bay and reflare it. That way I've just got like a nice straight shot from the tank to the pump, up to the engine bay. Let me weld this guy on. The way I built it, it has kind of a little gusset that's built in. And that should help this thing stay secure for years without worrying about this thing falling off the frame. Cool. Ah, that's awesome. That's a good little bracket. Stoked on that. I cut back that feed line up to the carb. We got that thing all welded up and it's cooled down. Now I can throw a little paint on that. Just in hopes to keep the rust down a little bit. Not that it's super nice under here, but I don't want to make it worse. That paint didn't do squat. That stuff's running like crazy. Whatever. Next up, we'll go ahead and throw the pump in its location. Gonna kind of run it like that. Oh, come on. Whoever the engineer was on this job is fired. Sweet, look at that. Got our pump in place, it clears the parking brake. This line is not all weird and kinked or nothing, so that's good. There we go, that's a nice straight shot there. And then we should be able to get that one right over to the tank with no problem. Feeling like that right there is probably it. This is going to be good. There we go. I think we're good. Got a nice ground on here. Everything is hooked up and zip tied, and we got the power running forward. And I'll pull that up into the engine bay. So let's lower this thing down and button this job up. This is going to be hopefully like the quick way to get this thing back on the road and running right. I do want to get a controller for the power, the electric fuel pump. There's a deal that basically makes it act more like one in a fuel injected rig, where it like will only run for a minute with the ignition on if it doesn't see a coil signal. So that's something I can add in later on, and basically that just makes it to where if you like crash the truck and you like have the ignition running, if it doesn't see a coil signal, it won't like just pump fuel into a fire or something. So it's a good thing to have. When I get it, I will show you what it's all about. Right now, let's just throw this fuel filter in and button up the wiring here. All right, I think we're good. Got that fuel filter up here. That goes from the line on the frame up into the regulator here. The regulator goes into the carb. That way we don't get too much fuel pressure. And then any extra pressure that that pump is making is going to go out of this, out of the regulated fuel filter, I guess you could say. Fuel filter with a return back to the tank. And there's a factory hose here that goes back down there. I guess it's time to fire this thing up and see what happens. If all goes well, there should be some pressure in that gauge and then also getting some return to the tank. I think we're good. We've got 1.5 pounds in the regulator there, which is kind of where I had it regulated to. Let's fire it up and see if it runs. That pump's kind of noisy, but I don't know that it's any noisier than the last one. I want to get this thing pulled out of here tonight because I want to use it in the morning to go mountain biking. Awesome. I'm excited to see if this thing runs right with this fuel pump. I kind of get the feeling this choke on the carb is not really working like at all. The whole carb altogether could use a little bit of tuning, but right now we're just worried about fuel pump. Oh boy, that was rough. That was rough. All right, I just got back from doing a bunch of errands, running errands, and driving the little D50 to go take care of business, and it was rough. This thing's not right. Let me show you what went on. Let me show you what's up. So I left the house and I made it about a quarter of a block, and the thing started running out of fuel. And I was like, dang it, this ain't good. So then I ended up trying to ramp up the regulator pressure on here to see if I could get this thing to like make a little bit more pressure, and maybe it wouldn't run out of fuel. So that worked for about another 1/8 of a block, and then I pulled over again and again and again, and basically what I ended up doing was I ended up bypassing the regulator altogether. I ran from that fuel filter right to the carb, so no regulator, and it didn't help. So then what I did was I actually found a roll of duct tape on the side of the road, and I pinched off the return line with my Leatherman, and then I held the Leatherman tight with the duct tape, and by pinching off that return line, the thing started running great. So basically, I need to go back to a regular fuel filter here, no return, and I will run it through the regulator just because that way at least I have a gauge of how much pressure it's making. So the pump itself was good, but the pump does not need a return line apparently, because that just made everything mad. So I'm gonna kind of get this thing put back to good and get rid of this filter that has a return to pump, and then this little D50 should be good to go. If it's bad, I'll let you know, but the plan right now is just to kind of put it back how that was and then drive it to work tomorrow. Kind of back together. This was from my dump run. I don't need that now. All right. This thing can go get ready to drive to work tomorrow. It's a good little truck. All right, it is now Sunday evening. I totally didn't get enough done this weekend, but we can still get a little something done, right? Check this out. It's time to start messing with this truck again. Start messing with the Nissan hardbody. I really want to get this thing to where I can at least drive it around the neighborhood before winter fully sets in. And if I'm going to do that, I need to start messing with the air system on it. I need to do the air system and I need to do shocks. Like those two things have to happen. And I got to just kind of roll up my sleeves and get it going. Let me dig out some of these parts. I want to show you what I'm doing for the air on this. It's actually pretty cool. Oh man, everything is just piled up from the build on that Jeep truck thing. Need to make a little bit of space so we can have some room to work. We've got an aluminum 5-gallon air tank. We've got 2 American-made Thomas air compressors. Those things are awesome. Thomas 319s. We've got a mountain of electrical and air hose doodads. 3/8 air brake line is what we would have called it back in the day. More fittings, electrical, and check this out. Big red manifold block. This is super cool. More on that later. By now you can probably tell this isn't my super thrown together, like whatever I have in the cupboard air system. This is a legit system from RideTech. This is the Ride Pro E5 controller module and display. This thing is going to give me all my readouts on here. I should be able to control it from this module as well. This part of the system is something I'm not super familiar with, and I was a little skeptical going with this new style, but I was able to, like, I didn't go all in. There's like tire or wheel height monitor systems and stuff that these things can use. I went with a pressure-based one, which is quite a bit simpler. It requires a little bit less, engineering, I guess you'd say, when you're building it. Basically, it takes the air pressure off of a digital sending unit and it kind of manages it through there rather than having a potentiometer ride height sensor. So this one should be fairly simple and easy enough for me to understand. It does have some really cool parts though. It's got an aluminum 5-gallon tank that's got 4 or 5 ports in it, plus a drain. That's cool. So cool air tank, that'll go under the bed. It comes with these radical Thomas air compressors. Thomas is a company that you might not have heard of if you're in the airbag scene, unless you're super old school. Back in the day, we used to run Thomas 315s and 317s before the whole Viair craze happened. I always liked the longevity of the Thomas compressors. They seem to last forever. They aren't quite as fast at pumping up the tank, but they last forever, it seems. And I'm excited. This is actually a 319 model, which having 2 of those, and if I don't run my pressure switch super high, I should get like years and years of use out of those. 3/8 line. This is considered the air brake line style. So we're gonna run 3/8 on everything, and then check this out. This is the valve block called the Big Red. These things are super cool. They've been around a long time. It's a really nice billet aluminum manifold. It's got 8 solenoids on it, so you have up and down control for each corner of the rig. You've got your inlet and your outlet, your fittings to your bags, and then your fittings to your gauges. So this thing is gonna be super solid. It's pretty simple to wire up. All this stuff, back in the day, I would have had valves in every corner and like wiring and plumbing just going all over the place. I'm hoping that this simplifies the plumbing situation a little bit and cleans up the whole system. I really need to make sure that this whole thing is out of sight. I don't want to see any of this in the bed of the truck. So quite a few things are going to go under the bed because I do have a lot of space under there, the tank especially. Maybe the compressors, the valve block, we'll see. I want to make sure that this thing is good to go driving down the roads in the Pacific Northwest, even if it's raining and stuff out. So we'll see if I end up putting a bunch of this under the bed. Right now I need to go get the rig up in the air on the lift so that we can kind of start figuring out, first and foremost, where the tank is going to go. Let's see where this is gonna live. You'll never guess. My battery died in the camera like halfway through that clip. Basically what I'm gonna do is try to keep these videos a little bit shorter and maybe add one in like every couple of days during the week. I wanna get some progress on this thing, but I don't really wanna like totally rush through it. So I think tonight I'm gonna start messing with these shocks. I can fit a 7-inch travel Skyjacker Black Max in here, and it should be a fairly simple job. So I want to start messing with the shock mounts. I need to trim the fender a little bit more because that full-size fender lip is actually grinding on the wheel still a little bit. And then once I kind of have like the shocks in place and I can cycle the suspension, I want to try and figure out like an exhaust that'll get past the axle and dump out back here, just to get the exhaust kind of farther away from the cab and not just like blow dust everywhere under the truck. Like, yeah, it'll blow dust in the back corner here, but hopefully that's not quite as obnoxious as if it's just dumping out right here. I'm gonna end up probably putting this tank a little bit further forward, and it'll be able to tuck up farther that way. And I think it'll actually sort of work as a block for like putting the air compressors and manifold back here. So kind of getting my game plan. That's just part of it. You just got to work on these things, and they kind of tell you what to do. So I'm going to keep hustling and trim that fender and start messing with these shock mounts. I just wanted to come out here and mount up an air tank. And now I'm trimming fenders and figuring out shock mounts. But it all has to get done. So might as well do it now. Even with the rear axle being narrowed and these bed sides being pushed out just a little bit, this little nub right here is still grinding on the wheel. And I can't really like I need to trim this about halfway all the way through this, just so that I don't have issues later on. Like, yeah, I could just sand that and it would fix the problem today. But if I go into some sort of like weird situation where it flexes a little more, I want to make sure that I don't damage either the paint on the fender or the chrome on the wheel. So we're gonna cut it like a little farther. Like I've said before, I'm really trying to make this truck as drivable as can be for as low as it is. So I want to make sure like I don't have a bunch of super half done stuff. I want to kind of finish everything and make it to where this thing's just a good driver. This is one of those things that could be a pain later on if you didn't do it. Now we can clean it up a little bit with the flap disc. Check it out, I'm back in the shop. It's a few days later. I didn't get much work done out here during the work week. I think we were cutting some of the sheet metal out here and making that lip a little bit thinner. I don't know if this is going to focus on it or not. We were making this lip thinner so that the tire wouldn't rub it. Part of the problem when you body drop a bed or like raise the floor, drop the body kind of deal, is the bed sides end up getting really weak. I tried to combat that a little bit by making these bed braces. I did these in an earlier episode about this truck, and they turned out really good. Those will be strong once everything's all bolted down. But we still have this section up here that's always going to be kind of floppy. Let's see. And I just want to make sure that for years I can drive this thing and not end up with like a crack in the sheet metal. So, especially now that we thinned that out, I'm going to end up doing some sheet metal work going from this lip, this original section of sheet metal that used to be for the inner fender liner, and it'll go back up there and attach up to that sheet metal part of the inner wheel well. So we're going to make some sheet metal pieces there, tack those in. I got to make sure they're super tight fitting so that the tire doesn't rub them when this thing's laid out all the way. All right, I'm going to cut up some of this electro galv sheet metal. This is like 18 gauge, light galvanized. I used it for the whole back wall of the cab. It is, it's pretty good stuff, and I have a lot of it. It has enough of a galvanized to it that it shouldn't rust very easily, but not so much that you can't really work with it. And you can actually weld this stuff and cut it and stuff, but don't try and keep it to a minimum. Don't breathe the fumes if you can help it, because you can definitely get sick from welding and cutting on galvanized sheet. But that should give us a start, and then I'm just going to kind of bend a couple little pieces into it so it sort of follows the body line and tucks up against the bed sides so that it's a little less likely to rub the tire. This is one of those little projects that I've been putting off for a long time. It's always in the back of my mind that I need to make it a priority. So it's kind of a good one also. It's not a hard project, it's just one that I've been kind of avoiding. So to jump out here and kind of make this my first project of the day and get warmed up seems like a pretty good plan. I'll trim the slag off of these and then we can start kind of bending them and fitting them quick. Alright, I have that 10-inch piece that was a drop. I'm just going to use this to kind of get my shape right. If I can find my pen. I know the very top, like 3/4 of an inch, is going to have almost a 90 in it. So we're just going to kind of use the vise and kind of make some stuff happen real quick and see how it kind of looks. Right there's probably good. It's like a 70. I'm going to go fit this and then figure out where the next bends need to be. The inside of the wheel well is pretty terrible for filming. It's hard to work in, let alone film in it. You can go a little more than I did at the top and then throw another little kink in it about midway. Let me bend this real quick. Put a little bit more of a bend in the top and then a little bit of a bend about halfway down. We're getting really close there. I'm a little worried about that portion with the tire coming up to it. Maybe I throw another bend there. This one I'm just going to do about over my knee. Didn't work at all. The top is fine. Now I need to bend this bottom one the opposite way though. I think that's the ticket right there. That gets us right up to the top. Yeah, that's it. That looks good. All right, this is the shape I'm gonna go for. I'm gonna go see if I can bend the proper pieces to that shape. All right. I have this Eastwood sheet metal brake over here. During the Jeep truck thing build, I had it bolted to the fab table, but then I needed to use that space for something else, so it's just sitting over here on the ground. Usually want these things bolted down to something, but for this small of a piece of sheet metal, we should be able to bend it where it's at. We can use this as our sort of guide. Need a little more than that. This is not super scientific. I'm just kind of trying to keep this bed alive. I haven't even checked if the other side is like identical, but I'm assuming it is. This is fun. This is the kind of sheet metal work that I like. Just kind of quick and down and dirty, good enough. Do the job, but don't overcomplicate it. That's pretty close to what we were working with on the sample piece. Let's go see if they fit up in there. Oh yeah, that's exactly what I was going for. Dig it. And take a little bend out of the top one just so it's sort of pressing up against there. And then I think I'll spray paint the back side of everything just because, even though it's galvanized, to get a little bit of paint in there. And then we can tack this in and check the tire clearance. That should be perfect. This is where I always use like my random spray paint colors that I don't, like I never use my good satin black on stuff like this. I always grab something in the cabinet that doesn't get used very often. Just because this is under the truck, inside a panel, all it's doing is just trying to keep some rust prevention for the future. So on this one I'm using some Rust-Oleum camouflage green. Pretty ugly color. Perfect for underneath the rig. There we go. There's not a ton of overlap on any of this. It's just kind of like right up against it, like a butt weld. There we go. Aha! That looks pretty good. I'm kind of butt welding all of this, which isn't bad. At least I'm not creating like big water traps that it didn't have before. So let me grab a wheel and we'll fit that on there, jack all this up and make sure that we're good to go. I've got a jack under the back axle and then another jack under the front cross member. That way when I'm jacking this thing up in the air, we don't try to like launch it off the lift, hopefully. Just throw a couple lug nuts on that and let's see what happens. It's going to jack that passenger side up first because it doesn't weigh as much right now, which isn't bad because it's actually tilting this wheel out a little bit. So that'll really give me a test of clearance. And right there, the truck is kind of coming off the lift. Let me put a little more preload on the back or on the front of it. Yeah, that should be, it's laid out flat on the ground right there. And we're still rolling. That's awesome. This truck's gonna be such a good driver. Oh yeah, it's perfect. Sick. Man, I can't wait to be driving this thing. Yeah, that's laid out plus a 1/4 inch, so we got room to spare. That's good. All right, let's call that a win, and I'll finish welding it up and we'll do the other side and then we'll get on to another project. All right, I finished up those inner fender support braces. That stuff all turned out really good. It's kind of becoming sort of a sturdy bed now. I even came in late at night and like welded up the inside of the bed sides in here, got all that sheet metal finished up, and I came through and I welded the bed rail to the inner fender well. So the thing is really starting to feel like a real truck bed again. I think that's it for this dirt head shed. Next time you see us, we'll be out here making a bed cover for the center portion of this thing and buttoning up some more stuff on the bed, moving into the suspension, getting the air system all dialed in. All kinds of stuff has to happen because I got a lot to do.